Welcome into the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, a podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. It's another edition. Mr. Jim Eichenhofer, Gus Kattengell with you on this Friday. TGI Jim. That's a preview of what's coming, just letting you know. We got a fun radio roundtable. Erin Summers, John DeShazier, part of the Pelicans Radio Network, will be joining us here a little bit to kind of go over the first 2 weeks of the season. We're already, if you can believe it, 2 weeks in, as the Pelicans wrapped up a 4-game homestand. Not the way they would have liked, Jim. A tough loss Sunday, a tough loss Monday, and then Wednesday. Look, you can't fault the effort you're seeing. The Pels had leads in some of those games, whether it be halftime, third quarters, cutting 16-point leads to 6 when it comes to Cleveland. Running out of gas Sunday, Monday was the issue. As far as the game on Wednesday, head coach Willie Green said he can point to one quarter.
They just came out with more force in that third quarter. Really, it was one quarter that they came out firing on all cylinders, and we made some just mistakes that we can clean up. But it's what happens when you just got guys out there with asking more of them, and some transition baskets, some back cuts, things like that we talked about. But, that's what good teams do. They make you pay when you make some mistakes, and they hit shots too. So, they came out and played well in that third quarter.
A 40-29 third quarter led to a 131-122 win. Your overall thoughts?
I thought Cleveland was coming off of 2 really tough games against Milwaukee that they were able to pull out and remain undefeated. And then Friday, which tonight, obviously, Cleveland has a game against Golden State. So I thought maybe, people talk about this in the NFL a lot. I thought maybe this would be a trap game for the Cavs, that you're overlooking the Pelicans because they have a bunch of guys out with injuries. And I don't think the Cavs did that, but at halftime when it was tied, I think at that point the Pelicans had gotten their attention. And that they came out, and as Willie Green talked about, that third quarter they won 40-29. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden they started making a ton of shots, and I think the Cavs' intensity picked up a little bit. And then the fourth quarter, obviously it wasn't a ton of fun because the Pelicans lost the game, but it was interesting to see New Orleans keep fighting back and getting within 4 or 5 points, and it seemed like the Cavs answered every time, which is one of the reasons why they're 9-0. They have super talented guards. They had some really good ball movement that got them easy baskets, and the Pelicans just were not able to get those 1 or 2 crucial stops when they cut it down to, say, 2 possessions to get it closer, and that was really ultimately what ended up getting Cleveland the win.
Pels outscored them 34-32 in that fourth quarter. Zion Williamson, who wound up, I almost say not miraculously, but miraculously having left the game, taking himself out, essentially came back and led the Pels in scoring with 29 points, and had this to say.
I like the energy we had, but if we want to win games, especially tough games like this, we can't have no slippage in any quarter like we had in the third. I can't have 4 turnovers like that. I have to get my turnovers down. Been having a lot of them lately.
27 points from Jose Alvarado, 7 for 7 from threes, man. It's just, on most nights, they get that win. Cleveland's undefeated for a reason, though. So I half full, half empty look here, Jim, because I almost feel like you can do both, right? The Pels are undermanned. They don't have a ton of their starters. They don't have a ton of their best defensive players. But they just went toe-to-toe with the best team in the league right now. So I guess if I can just tread water, this team's going to be good when they get their players back, man, because they almost could have won some of these games.
Yeah, and I think specifically, too, Jose going 7 for 7 from three-point range, not that you're going to expect him to make every 3 or shoot at that rate.
Give me 3 again.
But it was a good sign, though, because he has even talked about how he hadn't shot threes well to start the season. So I think on TV post-game they talked about how that was the Puerto Rican national team version of Jose Alvarado as far as his aggressiveness and looking for his own shot. So, yeah, that was a good sign. There's no doubt that you can't question the effort and the intensity that they played with to not only, be tied with Cleveland at halftime, but also they just kept battling back But ultimately, like I said, they weren't able to stop the Cavs enough to really make it a serious threat at the end of the game.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, let's get to our radio roundtable. We'll take a look at some of the things over the last 2 weeks. Here's our conversation with Erin Summers and John DeShazier. All right, time now to bring in our radio roundtable. Mr. Eichenhofer, that means we will bring in radio sideline reporter Erin Summers, and also part of the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. You'll see her on Road Games hosting with Wes Johnson. And our analyst on the Pelicans Radio Network, Mr. John DeShazier, who's had a very long week covering the Saints. How you doing, sir?
Doing well. Hey, still here, kicking, alive, breathing, all that good stuff. So
I hear you, man. We got a lot to get into here. Let's start with, give me some silver linings from the first 2 weeks of the season. Obviously, the win-loss record isn't where you want it to be, John, but there's very real reasons for that. And I know sometimes fans and media, when you don't have 4 of your starting 5 starting players in a lot of games, you're not going to win many games. Give me some silver linings.
Well, if you can't go team-wise, obviously, because the record isn't what you want it to be, and because it is a depleted team, and if you had to go with individuals, I know Jim gave us a couple of options, thank God. And, but I would say Brandon Boston is a guy that I really have enjoyed seeing play. He's been in the NBA, didn't get a lot of run in earlier stops, but sometimes you learn in the NBA it can be situational, it can be rotational, it can be the wrong fit at the right time and the right fit at the wrong time, or whatever it is. But he, unfortunately, due to injuries here, has been able to step into the starting lineup and really get some nice games. Last 4, he's averaging 15 a game, and that means something. I mean, and it's been an efficient 15 a game. It hadn't been a guy just jacking up shots to get some numbers. It's been situations where he's been pretty efficient, and you see that he is able to play the game. He didn't get those opportunities in other places, with the Clippers. He didn't get those opportunities. The minutes weren't there. And the NBA is all, for a lot of these guys, the NBA is all about minutes. You get enough minutes, and you'll probably put up some numbers in the NBA if you're with the right team in the right situation. And look, we know Brandon Boston will not carry over these numbers throughout the season, because when the rotational guys get back, Brandon Boston is probably going to go back into the rotation on the bench. But having said that, I think he's earned a spot in the rotation. I think he gets some minutes. I don't think he's going to get 28, 30, but I think he'll be on the floor. And that's significant for a guy like him, because he's been looking for a place in the NBA to be able to kind of make his mark. And I think we've seen that, given the opportunities, he's a guy who can contribute. He might not be your top 3-4 guys, but he can play. He's got some game. He can play point. He can play point for you, and we've seen him play point for the Pels. He can score off the wing. He can shoot threes. He can get to the rim and finish. He's got some things about him that are very likable, and so it wouldn't surprise me at all when C.J. McCollum gets back, and DeJounte Murray gets back, and Herb Jones gets back, and Trey Murphy gets back. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he still is not in the rotation, because I think he'll be a really good addition to that second unit. I think he's a guy who we've seen, again, play well and might be able to finish out some games for you in some situations. So I like what we've seen of him.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt when Zion Williamson literally says that after the game, that he liked him to stick around. Erin, give me some silver linings.
Yeah, I love that Zion said that. He was like, if it's up to me, I think he should get a spot, because he's a two-way guy, and eventually he'll hit that number where he can't play any more games up with the Pelicans before they have to actually sign him, or just keep him down in the G, which I know they were really excited when they signed him because of obviously what he can do. But so far he's been doing good things for the Pelicans. I would say overall, just the experience that a lot of these players are getting is going to be good. And it's a good silver lining when there are injuries, you get other people run. Hopefully we're never in this situation again where we need minutes like that. But if so, these players now have had the experience playing alongside each other, playing in big moments. But I'm going to go with Brandon Ingram and just the leadership that he's shown, because I think he's done a phenomenal job being consistent every night, working for the best shot, bringing the guys around him along as well, not just trying to carry everything himself. He's really trying to bring everybody along alongside him, and I think he's playing really well on both ends of the court. The communication that he's showing defensively, just trying to help and trying to be that main consistent cog that we have right now because everybody else has kind of been in flux.
My biggest silver lining so far to me is just building up the depth at the wing positions. I mean, JD mentioned how, CJ hasn't played in a few games. Herb's been out. Brandon Ingram is also kind of a wing player when the team is fully healthy and at full strength. But I think Brandon Boston might not have gotten an opportunity at all if it wasn't for the injuries. Mm-hmm. And to me, not only has Jordan Hawkins got to play more, but he's also shown that he can handle a lot more responsibility. If he's in the starting lineup and you need him to have a big game, he can do it. So I think he was going to play a good amount no matter what. But, I mean, obviously now he's out tonight as well. But to me, that's been, if there is a positive so far, that's one of them. And by the way, too, I believe the rule is that a two-way contract guy can only be up with the NBA team for 50 games. So I've already seen some hijinks on the injury reports with other teams that other teams are putting, and there's nothing illegal about this or whatever. It's just, it is what it is. But you see teams put guys on injury. The injury report is out in G League assignment, even though they're not necessarily with the G League team. Mm-hmm. But part of that is just because of the accounting for, you can only be up for 50 games. So that rule applies to Brandon Boston as well.
Yeah, and that's a good comment on Hawk. He's, you want to see guys make the improvement. You want to see guys make a jump. He's made a huge jump from year one to year two, and it's going to be a real asset to this team this season.
What about Yves Missi? Give me like 10, 15 seconds on him because I feel like leaving this 4-game homestand, I'm running into people saying you're going to have to increase his minutes. Is that a pretty big jump when you think about it?
He's made a huge jump just from training camp to now. Now he's going to have to improve offensively. You can't play 4-on-5 on offense in this league. And so that's where his improvement is going to have to come. And it probably will come when you get back to the rotation because, he's a guy who can set the high screen, he'll roll to the rim. You don't have to run any offensive plays for him. So that part of his game's got to get better. But in terms of just showing up and improvement and a shot blocker for this team, I mean, he's been phenomenal. He's a long athlete, and that's something you need in the NBA.
Erin, you're on the court against Cleveland, and they got two of the biggest bigs that some Pels fans wish would be over here. I mean, they're really big bigs, and he
there are a couple things about him. He's not afraid. He's going to go in there against some of those guys. His footwork at times really stands out.
You mean when he stepped out of bounds?
He didn't step out of bounds. But his footwork in the lane, I think, is impressive for a big. I would like to see him involved in some more of the pick and roll action and just diving to the hoop. It'll come. We've seen the connection sometimes on the alleys. That's a great outlet for somebody like Jose if they can get there. But right now, offensively, there's just a lot of focus on a couple individuals, not a lot of options because of who's on the court. So, yeah he will definitely feel less pressure, I think, when other players are back on the court. And then he might, just kind of continue to flourish and grow in that offensive role.
How about this silver lining, too? We might have found this out anyways, even if it wasn't for multiple guys being out of the lineup. But to me, we've found that they nailed the last two first-round picks, that Jordan Hawkins was a really good pick at 14 in the lottery and Yves Missi at number 21. I don't think Yves has played necessarily more because of guys being out than he would have because, knock on wood, the center position actually hasn't had any injuries so far. So he really has earned that role that he's been in. But to me, by giving him and some of the other guys, and Jordan Hawkins specifically, more responsibility, we've already learned how excellent those draft picks were. So I'll throw that into the bin of silver linings as well.
Erin, not only did he step out of bounds, there was a shot clock violation. I don't know if you knew that as well.
We're trying to be positive here, Gus.
Those were bad calls. I was being completely sarcastic on that. It was crazy to think about that. But look, you mentioned Yves Missi working on the short term on his offense. What about the Pels working short term? What would you like to see them improve overall?
Well, the things you want to see the Pels improve on, I'm not exactly sure they can't. You can't get taller. You can't get taller. You can't get bigger. Now, you want to see this team, and they've rebounded fairly well. I do want to see, because the three-point shooting efficiency has been there. Mm-hmm. The three-point attempts have not been there. And I know the self-stated goal was 40 a game. It's hard to get to 40 unless you really dedicate yourself to it. And you're seeing with the Pelicans, you revert to who your nature is. You become what you are, especially in stressful situations. And so this team getting up 27 threes, and I think 27, less than 30 threes in the last game, and 22 threes in one game, if you're 9 for 22, that's a nice percentage, but that's not enough. And you've got to be able to get those threes up when you're shorthanded like this and when you're undersized, because that's kind of the equalizer. If you can get enough of them up, you can equalize things. It doesn't have to be a great percentage if you're shooting 45 of them, but you get the attempts up, you get those cheap points, the extra points. You're trading out threes for twos. That's what your goal has to be, because, again, you're missing a ton of production, even though you have Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram on the court. If you have those two guys on the court, you're still missing DeJounte Murray. You're still missing Trey Murphy. You're still missing C.J. McCollum. That's a lot of points. That's a lot of production.
Right.
So, it's a lot to ask of, Jose Alvarado. Hey, can you give me another 7 for 7 3-point range? Right. No, that's not going to happen. It's a lot to ask for, Brandon Boston to come up and give you 15 a game all the time, because that's not been his game. And he might be capable of it. But, I mean, again, a lot of production that you're missing. The three-pointers can kind of balance that out. I'd like to see this team, if you're dedicated to it, you're going to have to go through the rough patches and you're going to have to shoot the ball. You have to take the shots and live with the results. You can't say we're going to do it and then you don't do it.
Right.
And you're shorthanded. Now, if ever there was a time to do it, now is the time to do it.
Yeah. Right now, the Pelicans are 9th in the league in 3-point percentage, shooting 38.9%. They are second to last in attempts. There should not be that big of a gap when you're shooting that well from outside. So that's definitely an area that they need to put a lot of focus on.
That's a great point. Maybe sometimes you wouldn't shoot if you're not making them, but you are.
Right. So let's start shooting a little bit more. But also, and I'm surprised, and maybe Gus, you are the one that's going to bring this up, but the 2-point percentage, the inside game right now has been lacking a little bit. The Pelicans are bottom 4 in the league at just 50% from, those paint shots.
Some of that's got to be normalized with Zion just shooting at the rate that he shot his whole career. To me, that's some of that is fluky. See, that's what I want to believe, at least.
Guys, always say guys play to the back of their cards. Okay, Zion's going to play to the back of his card.
Right.
And the back of his card says he's going to shoot 60% from the field. And all of his shots basically are in the paint. So that number is going to go up, you would imagine.
Yeah.
The point scoring and the efficiency in the paint will go up with Zion Williamson being Zion Williamson, quote unquote. Now, what you don't say, or I guess we're not forbidden to say, you lose Jonas Valanciunas. That's a guy who scored around the rim.
Yeah.
So you don't have a lot of guys who are able. Now, you do want to see this team convert more layups, man.
I mean, finish, yeah.
Come on, just
what
there
did
are
you say?
opportunities
The L word
there.
again?
Layups. No, you want to see dunks.
Yes.
Yeah, there are opportunities there, and I mean, and even Messi had a dunk block the other night, but I like.
But at least he went for
the aggression. When you're around there and you have that ability, punch it. Don't finesse it. Because finessing is where you get in trouble. So you like to see the team finish around the rim more that way, but again, you're an undersized team, and a lot of these guys, their games aren't necessarily predicated on scoring at the rim. But when you do get those opportunities, you get the layups, you got to convert them. You got to finish. And sometimes you do have to finish in traffic over defenders, over bigger players, over shot blockers. You just got to finish. There are no excuses. You just got to finish.
Or draw a foul. And Zion's been really good at that lately. He's been really aggressive inside. Even if he's not making the basket, he's been drawing contact and getting to the line.
The area that I want to see them improve the most is, I had to click on this like 4 times this morning on NBA.com, but they're 30th in defensive efficiency right now, which is unbelievable if you think about. I mean, we've talked a lot. I've talked a lot about how the talent that they don't have on the court makes it harder for them to score. But I couldn't believe. I knew that they were towards the bottom in defense, but after that Cavs game, I think it pushed them down a bunch of spots. So for them to be last in defense, I mean, in some ways, obviously that's a major concern. But on the other hand, similar to what we talked about with Zion finishing in the paint, the Pelicans were 6th in defense the last 2 seasons. So to me, that's also a number that, I mean, obviously it has nowhere to go but up if you're 30th. But I think just them getting back to the way that they've played and getting guys back will immediately improve that number. But yeah, that was really surprising. That's something that I think even with multiple players out, you can easily move far up from the bottom of the league in defense with the personnel that they still have.
You said the magic words there, the people out, and I'll give you 4 more words to go with that. Herb Jones, DeJounte Murray.
Yeah.
You're missing your 2 best defenders, and people feed off that. And we see the difference that can make. We saw it with Cleveland anyway, but Cleveland's got the bigs behind, but Cleveland chases you on the 3-point line. They smother you because they've got the shot blockers behind you. Mm-hmm. Well, you're missing your 2 best perimeter defenders in those 2 guys. And I know Yves Missy's going to be the guy who's going to be on the island back there, but you force those guys off the 3-point line. You funnel them in, and that's the way you get that efficiency going. But we're talking about guys being on the floor who are capable of getting steals and deflections and just harassing people. And who blocks better 3-point shots than Herb Jones? So you've got 2 guys that you're missing that you can feed off defensively as a team. And then you throw those 2 guys out there. You put Jose Alvarado back in his natural role, come off the bench. He gives you that energy. So those are the things that energize a team, because defense is all effort, man. It's just that. And you got to have that. That's why coaches get so ticked off, because that's just playing hard.
Yeah.
And there's no substitute for that. You can have an off night shooting the ball, but you can always work hard on defense.
Well, the Pelicans are getting beat down the court a lot too, because their shots aren't falling. Mm-hmm. So the other team's grabbing the rebounds and going. So that also,
and a lot of griping to the refs. I mean, and
right.
I get it, man. I get it. You get fouled, you don't get the shot. You don't get the call. You're chatting with the ref.
Who, Jose?
But the game is going on. The game doesn't stop for you to gripe. Yeah. So you got to move. Mm-hmm. You see a couple of times it's like, dude, get back and then gripe between whistles or something. But you got to get back and get back on defense. And you can't continue to have it going that way, because you're giving away the easy points that you need to be trying to score.
There was a play in the Portland game where they inbounded the ball and somebody snuck in and stole it, and then people were still complaining to the refs, or I know what it was. It was Eve got hit in the face, and people were still distracted by that instead of playing the game. And it's like, if you're the guy inbounding the ball, you're like, hey, guys, I need to throw the ball to somebody. Yeah. I know you're upset that Eve got hit in the face, but, we got to keep playing. Yeah. So, another thing I'd throw in, too, Erin, you mentioned the missed shots and, the transition defense. To me, part of the defense being poor also is because of turnovers. And if you get your guys back, you get DeJounte Murray, who's the floor general, back on the court, you would think that the turnovers will decrease, because, sometimes you just can't. There's just nothing you can do, relatively speaking, defensively, if you're constantly turning the ball over. Yeah. I've noticed other teams are picking up the Pelicans in the backcourt constantly, too.
Yeah.
And it seemed like before, a lot of teams would pick up the Pelicans 60, 70 feet from the basket if Jose wasn't in the game, and then when Jose came in, they would stop doing that because he can handle the ball so well. But now they're like, we know he's going to play 30, 35 minutes a game. Let's try to make him work as much as we can.
Wear him down.
Exactly.
Yeah. So wear him down. Yeah. You see that with this team now. And I don't blame opponents. I'm looking at the Pelicans saying, okay, you don't have a point.
Right.
So we're going to pick you up, and if we can get you to eat 6 seconds off the shot clock, bringing it up, or 7 seconds, you get into your offense with 17 seconds, 18 seconds, and you're basically at the logo trying to get into your offense.
Right.
So you are in a rush already. Yeah. You have not done what you wanted to do offensively, and we have you where we want you. And so now you're in a situation where, and then if you got, a guy like, Brandon Ingram, who's going to, do some one-on-one stuff, well, everybody else defensively, you can kind of rest and just watch and guard him and wait for him to come to you, because the ball isn't moving that well. So, the Pels have some things that they can and will, I'm sure, work on to be a little bit more fluid offensively, because the ball has to move with this team. It has to move with this team. You got to trust your teammates.
Yeah.
The assists were low in the last game, and that's one of those things where you got to trust your teammates and knock wood. Your teammates got to make you right. They got to make the shot.
It's funny, too. BI can make tough shots, but if no matter who you are in the NBA, if you're taking a lot of tough shots against the shot clock, the other team is just licking their chops and saying, like, we can't wait for them to take a tough shot that we know we're going to rebound and we can all start running. It's like guys in the starting blocks in a track event where it's like, that they're headed that way. That's another thing, too. You just can't constantly take shots that are difficult when the shot clock's running down. And
he made a tough fade over Evan Mobley, and I think he made a tough fade over Jared Allen the other night. But those shots aren't sustainable.
Right.
It's hard to continue to do that possession after possession over 2 guys like that. So that's, Cleveland, you're like, okay, hey, nice shot, big boy.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Right. Yeah.
Do it again and do it again and do it again.
Yep.
So the percentages don't work in your favor.
Yeah, you just live with it. You guys kept saying during the broadcast it looks so easy for them, and every possession looks so difficult for the Pels. Look, bottom line, we got to wait to see if this team gets healthy. In the meantime, I thank you, Jim, for putting this up because you almost lose train of thought on it. The NBA Cup's on its way, right? And so this time, okay, well, I was going to say, this time last year, we knew it was coming. We kind of really didn't know what it meant, whatever. It seemed, though, like fans really liked it. It seemed like the teams really liked it. And especially when you look at this team, they made their way to Vegas and got into the semifinals. So when you look at last year, look at this year coming up, Denver at Dallas, Golden State at Memphis, the 4 games that were counted to the Cup. What are your thoughts about it?
I like it, actually, and I think the players liked it because it was something different. You placed the carrot in front of them and said, okay, if you do this, you get this reward. And I think players are competitors, number one. And guys say, yeah, hey, you know what? That money would be nice. Or, those kinds of things. So that was the carrot they placed in front of them. And it was good for the league. And hopefully it'll continue to be good for the league. A lot of times, sometimes the longer something goes on, the more stale it gets. But hopefully it'll be good for the league. And hopefully it will be good again for the Pelicans this year because, it'll be something that can kind of juice up the fan base and maybe juice up the team and, give them a little temporary carrot to go for. But again, if you're this shorthanded, I don't know how realistic it is, to be saying, okay, we want to get, we can get back to Vegas. It's going to be difficult, but it will be something to point to and say, okay, we want to win these games against these opponents, because it's a competitive situation and we've got something to look forward to at the end of it.
The NBA Cup is coming up next week, and the majority of the games are going to be played by the end of November, so 3 weeks here. And Pelicans are not going to be at full health at that point. Right. So, yes, it's going to be difficult. Still playing shorthanded. We'll have some people back, but I think just in general, if it makes things more competitive, I'm all for it because that's what you want to see. You want to see teams compete. You want to see good games that matter for something, helps elicit that competitive fire. And in November, I would love to see some more competitive games in November.
To me, there was 2 very specific memories that I have from the 2023 NBA Cup that are evidence of why I thought it was a good idea. I mean, to me, I'm not sure how many people remember this, but the last night of pool play, or the group stage, you could call it, Pelicans were not playing that night, but there was a game between Houston and Dallas that determined whether they were going to advance or not. And I mean, people would be interested in a Rockets-Mavericks game probably, but I don't think to much of a degree, that especially that early in the season. Yeah. But depending on the standings, whatever. But because it meant so much to the Pelicans as far as specifically their chances to keep going on, I think that added some interest. And that same night, there was a Kings-Warriors game on national TV on the West Coast that a ton of people, I think, stayed up for because there was different implications, and there was this weird scenario of I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like one team had to win by a certain number of points, and then once they were down by so many, they couldn't advance, etc. So, and the second example to me was, and I was there for this, the quarterfinal game at Sacramento that the Pelicans won once they got to the knockout stage, that felt like a playoff game. That felt like intense, and I was surprised because I thought it was going to be a higher level of, competitiveness and urgency, but it honestly did feel like in Sacramento's arena and among their fans, like something similar to what we see in the spring where the intensity of a playoff game is there. So those 2 things, I mean, to me were reasons why I thought it was a positive. To me, you're not taking anything away from what is already happening in the regular season. Right. Some of these games are relatively mundane in terms of you play 82 games, and some of these are like the 19th game of an 82-game season. There's nothing that special about it, and you're not subtracting from it. To me, you're adding to it. So that's why I think it was kind of ultimately it was kind of a no-lose situation.
I think visually, too, I think the league did a good job with the courts and the uniforms to kind of let you know if you didn't know, right? If you're watching a TV or if you're watching games, wow, that is it. Oh, it must be a cup game because of that. And with the Pelicans, they're going to have a different court here as well. The Skulligan logo was awesome last year. A little different this year. Erin, let's start with you on this because you are our fashion expert. Red trim, navy blue court with a gargantuan pelican in the center. What do you think?
I mean, I love that they went with the blue and the red and like the Pelicans colors. I just don't know how a dark navy court is going to look and on TV, playing on it. What uniforms are you going to wear with it? If we do go with the new city edition, the new city editions are purple and
I think
dark purple.
I think everyone's wearing statement uniforms this year. I think the courts match up with the statement, so the red.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that in the Pelicans' case, they're going to wear the red uniforms for both of their home games.
Okay,
So-
I can get down with that then.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. I like that. JD?
I don't care.
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming.
I don't care.
Okay.
It's something different. It's great for the fans, and I'm sure and players take notice of stuff like this. So players will want to play to a certain level. I mean, they're competitive, so they see something different and they want to put on a good show. But me personally, I don't. I just want to see the team play well. I don't care if the court's orange. I do not care.
Some of them will be all orange too.
The basketball is the same. The rims are the same. Put the ball in the hoop, whether it's a blue floor or a turquoise floor, or fuchsia. I don't care if it's highlight or green. Just go and play well. If you're the Pelicans or any other team in the NBA. So, but again, it is something that's visually attractive generally, and it's something that I think fans love it. I think fans love it.
I think the recognition of the new different court is extremely helpful and very well done that they did that. Even for the players, like you said, if the court's different, there's something different on the line for this game, immediately recognizable for the fans. I will say, however, the Timberwolves court is ugly. It is green, and it is not a pretty green. It's just bad.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, it's gross.
I think on average, I think the courts this year are slightly more conventional.
Yeah.
Just a touch. Like there's a few that actually look like pretty similar to what you see during a normal game. But I do think that last year's courts, and Erin, you touched on this, last year's courts served their purpose because it drew people's attention and it made people recognize, like, okay, this is something different. So I don't necessarily want it to be like, I remember specifically the Chicago court last year. It was like so red that it was distracting from the game. It was like hard to watch the actual basketball that was being played on it. I don't know if that's a great direction to go in, but I mean, for the first year of it, they definitely did what they were supposed to do. And now I'm fine if they can kind of tamp it down a little bit as we go. We can progressively get a little bit less wild with the court designs over time, and people will recognize that it's still the NBA Cup.
Looking through them again, like you mentioned, orange. The Knicks is an orange one. It's going to be an interesting one. I don't know if you guys have seen the Trailblazers one. They're roses in the back of it. Is that
The
a tribute
logo.
to the Rose Garden back in the day? You see the roses in the gray.
Rose
Garden.
Garden, Rose
Yeah.
City too. That's what people call it.
I think that is really cool.
It's
And I
like
mean-
Charlotte has like the honeycomb
Last I
on
heard,
their court.
roses
Yeah.
really smell like boo boo. So it's a little outcast, folks. Okay, I didn't make that up.
I'm really shocked and surprised the Lakers didn't go with the defending champs on their logo too on the court, huh? Nothing?
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like I remember there was like a little pushback that they didn't want to put up a banner, but I think
It's all about the banner.
if
If
I
the
mean,
Pels
I
ever
think
win,
that-
are we doing a banner? Do you want a banner?
I mean, you get a trophy.
Okay.
Shouldn't you get a banner?
I want a smaller banner. I don't want one that's like the same size as what an NBA title championship would be.
It can't
Yeah.
be gaudy.
I think
it
actually-
cannot be gaudy.
You don't want a Gardy banner,
Right.
I don't want a huge, but look, I want a banner. I
right.
want something.
All right.
And I know I'm not usually the one to credit the Lakers, but I think the way that they did it actually, whether it was their decision or the league's, was the best way to do it, where it's like they have their championship normal size banners and they have a separate banner that also leaves room for other years that you could win. It's kind of like a division championship. You have one banner and it has every year that you won the division on
like
it,
that.
and it leaves room for
I kinda
future
like that.
years.
We could do I saw somebody put on social media, maybe do something like the Stanley Cup where that banner goes to the city that has it. And like to your point, Lakers,
Yeah.
this year will
Okay.
be whatever team in that
Not bad.
resides in that city until next
No,
year.
I don't want
If we
anybody
wanted, I
else's
wanted to stay here.
You wanted to stay
We don't
That's
have have enough banners to hang.
Okay.
Right
you don't want
now.
your banner going anywhere.
You know what I would like to see is, yes, okay, so it's more competitive and more fun, whatever. Can we please make this be like an auto berth to the playoffs if you win?
I'm not worried. I'm not willing to go that far, but I'm totally.
That's been talked about.
One of my revolutionary ideas is adding wins. Like you get like 5 wins added to your record.
5 wins?
Maybe 2 or 3.
Wow.
I'm willing to negotiate on the number.
That's huge.
But if you want to talk about, it could be 2 or 3.
So do you take away the losses? Like, because you have to equal the same amount of games,
I'm
right?
saying like if you go 45 and 37 and another team's 45 and 30 or 47 and you get 5, they just give you the 50 wins. Well, your record will stay 45 and 37. I'm just saying you use this for like playoff seedings and stuff like that. So
I like kind of Aaron's idea, maybe like a joker, where you can maybe choose, like if you're already a playoff team.
But it's like
and
you're
like
playoff,
fifth.
not even play in.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
you're
Like
in.
if you're 5th, you can cash in your joker card and you go to 4 or something of that nature.
anything that makes it more the stakes
An
higher
incentive.
to me is
I think
is
that's a
fine
great
with me.
idea. I
As
love
long as
it.
it's not out of control, I'm cool with it.
30 seconds here. Since this is the first time we've gotten this group together, 30 seconds. Western and Eastern Conference. Biggest surprise, good and bad. Western Conference, Eastern Conference. Let's start with the West. JD.
West biggest surprise. I've got to think about this for a second.
I know this wasn't on our
No.
list of
Yeah, I gotta
topics.
think about
but-
this for a
Throws us a
I'm throwing it in
curveball.
there. Golden State 7-1, OKC 7-1, Phoenix 7-1. Is Golden State your biggest surprise? Is the Rockets in 4th right now 5-3?
No, I would say actually Phoenix is my biggest surprise out of those because Phoenix has not been a team that looked like it gelled well, and especially last year. So maybe the offseason helped them, but they did not play well together last year. And so them being 7-1 is a bit of a surprise for me. Golden State, as long as Steph Curry's around and he is back on the court, yeah, that's nice. But Phoenix, that's the team that I thought might be on the verge of implosion.
Aaron, biggest surprise.
I don't know that I'm surprised because I think the way that the Nuggets handled the offseason and as many trades that players that they allowed to go or, and didn't get much back for, I'm not surprised that they're kind of middle of the road. Memphis, I thought they might get a little bit more of a boost with Ja coming back, and we'll kind of see how they continue to gel. But it's just interesting that those are middle of the pack right now. And then, we figured OKC would be up at the top. So not, just kind of still feeling things out, I guess.
I'm going to say this kind of half jokingly and also ask people to not actually look at the records in the standings overall. But my surprise is that right now the 4 seed in the West is Houston and the 4 seed in the East is the Brooklyn Nets. So those are standings surprises.
How about not surprised at all that it took, let's see, what's the record? 4-4, 8 games for JJ Redick to lose it.
Yeah.
Already.
Yeah. I don't even
the
think
media
I don't
member.
think it took 8. I think it was
They
like
probably
4 or
didn't take
5.
8.
Shockingly,
Yeah.
the question that made him get up and go, I already just said it and walk out of an interview was, are you getting your players to play hard? Yikes. On the Eastern Conference, you got Cleveland 9-0. We just saw them. Boston Pacers, Jim just said. Brooklyn Nets right there at 4. Hawks, we saw them already. The Knicks, Miami, Charlotte, Chicago, Orlando, who the Pels are playing tonight. There's Detroit, 3 wins already. I don't know any surprise. For me, it's Milwaukee. Milwaukee's 2-6, and every time I turn the TV on in his studio on NBA Today, they're talking about, is Giannis going to be available for trade? That to me is a surprise.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're not playing well, then that's going to be a question. They're big too. Giannis and Dame are playing okay. They just don't seem to have a lot around them. I did not know Chris Middleton meant that much to that team, and also trading away Drew Holiday has meant huge for that team. But Chris Middleton was the guy when they won the NBA Finals. Chris Middleton was kind of, now Giannis got the Finals MVP, but Chris Middleton was like the guy, the clutch guy. And not having him, because he hadn't been right since then, and they have suffered for it. But the surprise to me is Cleveland. I mean, they're undefeated, and they've had good parts, but they get to the playoffs and they struggle. And I know this offseason, Donovan Mitchell said, look, we want to go to the conference finals. And he kind of made it sound like it really doesn't count unless you get at least to the conference finals, the NBA finals. So, you knew they were going to come in with maybe a little bit different mindset. He and Darius Garland are playing really well together. Yeah. Then they got the 2 bigs, man. They've got a lot to like. and they're playing well together. They don't look like they care who's getting the glory and that kind of stuff. And it's early in the season, but they just look like a cohesive team.
I think Atlanta is going to continue to get better because they've been dealing with a lot of injuries as well.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of surprised. Obviously, there was a huge trade over the summer with us getting DeJounte Murray. And the way that team was gelling last year, they felt like they needed to separate those two pieces with Murray and Trae Young. So it's interesting to see how it's working so far. Even with the injuries, they're doing pretty well. And Dyson Daniels has been helpful for them.
He really has.
Has been a little surprising.
Yeah, I mean, was it surprising when he emptied the clip on the Pels bench?
Yes. That wasn't surprising. That was shocking.
I mean, Atlanta will
shocking.
change a person.
Yeah.
I never knew he had that in him.
Lemon pepper Dyson.
You know, you guys referenced the Bucks. To me, there's a big general surprise in the Eastern Conference, and that is there's a million circumstances that explain some of this. But if you told someone in the summer, without any context, that 3 of the 4 bottom teams in the East standings are Orlando, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia, they would be like, "There's no possible way that that's the case." But I mean, injuries
Philly has 1 win.
have been a huge. Yeah, Philly with 1 win. Embiid hasn't played yet. Banchero's out for Orlando. Milwaukee's had a bunch of issues and they've had a pretty tough schedule. But to me, that's the biggest surprise. If you look at the East, is like those 3 of those 4. The East is not great, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the podcast. But
yeah, it would be nice to be in the East like we should be.
Yeah. I mean, the East is not good, but those for that to be 3 of the bottom 4 teams in a conference that's not too stellar right now is pretty surprising.
Yeah, to your point, Erin, Atlanta's 5th seed right now, 4-5, below 500. Right. It'd be nice. The Lakers, who we were laughing at, they're 4-4 in 10th. So there you go. Anyway, thanks so much. We could do this forever. I appreciate it. Miss Erin Summers, Mr. John DeShazier. Look, I know I threw in the whole Western Eastern Conference thing, but 2 weeks in, I wanted to kind of say there are some surprises. I didn't think Philly would have 1 win. Milwaukee down there. Some teams already kind of showing that they're pretty good here. So that's kind of the point that you and I talk about in post-game. You got time, but you don't want to be so far back to where now it's almost realistically looking like you're not going to be battling for 1, 2, or 3, or 4. You know, so you want to start getting some wins here. This little brief time right now, like the Pels need to get a win here against Orlando tonight.
And unfortunately, this is just reality. If you start out 1-6 in the East, it's not the end of the world because you're not that far out of a bunch of teams, and I mean there's enough time to make up ground. Right. But in the West, you don't want to get more than 5, 6, 7 games below 500 and have to fight your way just to get back to 500, which isn't even, as I've said before, 500 isn't even the bar for play-in tournament.
Look, I'm not disrespecting the first 2 of the next 5. I'm not disrespecting Orlando tonight. They've been a tough matchup, but they're different without Paolo Banchero.
Right.
I'm not disrespecting them, but you got to get this win. I'm not disrespecting Monday's game against Brooklyn.
Right.
You mentioned they're one of your surprises. They're in the top 4, right, of the Eastern Conference. But after that, it's Denver, it's the Lakers, and it's OKC. Those are pretty good teams.
Yes.
So even though the Lakers, and we make fun of them, they're 4-4.
Pels have not matched up well against them.
No, and they always play well. Anthony Davis miraculously is always healed. He plays well, and they got size and all that. OKC's got size. They've lost 1 game. They're playing really well. And Denver's got Jokic. It's just matchups, right? So, Jim, it's important to win Monday, and it's important to win today.
You know, Gus, we didn't plan this out, but you actually set me up perfectly for my trending number, and that is...
Wait, hold on. Are you ready for that?
Oh.
Okay, hold on.
TGI Jim, it's Friday, which means Mr. Eichenhofer has a pair of things for us. Trending numbers and weekend showdown. What are we starting with, Jim?
You like that, buddy?
I love it. It's kind of a nice groove there. Well, thank you, Mallory. The trending number is, so I'll give you a little quiz here. It'll be an easy quiz, so don't worry. There's been 38 games played between the West and the East this year. Okay. Teams playing against each other. Of those 38 games so far, how many would you guess the West has won of those 38?
Give me 26.
Oh, my God, Gus. It's 27.
Wow.
Yes, that was a very good guess. So the West has won 71% of the games between the West and the East so far. we've seen some imbalances we've seen a lot of imbalances between the conferences over the years. Last year it went back to the West has a huge advantage. Before that, it was actually starting to get slightly more competitive, and I was starting to get encouraged that maybe the East was going to hold up its weight a little bit for once over the last 20 years. But I mean, so far the trend is definitely headed in the direction where the West is way better than the East again. And I mean, specifically with these two teams tonight, the Pelicans are 2-2 against the East and only 1-4 against the West. Orlando is 3-3 against the East, 0-3 against the West. They've played 3 games against the Grizzlies, Mavericks, and Thunder and lost them by an average of 17 points per game. So, I mean, you see the drastic difference between playing the different conferences. So, circling back to your original point where you talked about the importance of trying to get this win against Orlando and trying to get this win against Brooklyn, it looks like, once again, all of the teams in the West that have designs on being in the playoffs or making the play-in tournament, being part of the postseason, you're going to have to do some good work against the West or against the Eastern Conference.
You have to get those wins there.
If you lose those games, you're going to lose ground on pretty much everyone else.
That's a good point.
And by the way, too, the Pelicans were 19-11 against the East last season. They were 30-22 against the West. So again, you see so much of a difference in the competitiveness of the two conferences. Next 2 games, Friday, Monday against the East, and then 5 of the Pelicans' next 6 after that are against the West. So, to your point, weekend showdown. There's Sunday night. I know a lot of people are going to be watching football. There's a really good Sunday night game between the Lions and the Texans, but this is one of the best nights I've seen of the season so far. If you look at just Western Conference matchups, so the weekend showdown that I'm going to go with is Dallas versus Denver. But I'm also giving at 7 o'clock, but I'm also giving honorable mention because at 6 o'clock on Sunday night, the Warriors play at Oklahoma City and Sacramento plays at Phoenix at 7. So, I mean, those are 3 outstanding games and matchups between teams. And the reason I picked Dallas versus Denver is because I think it's a really good test, again, for the Nuggets in terms of which direction is this season going. Are they going to fade out of, competition for top 4 in the West? Are they going to be back in that range of the standings? And obviously, beating the Mavericks would be huge in doing that. And I think the Mavericks too have kind of been up and down a little bit so far in the early part of the season. So Dallas versus Denver, Ball Arena, 7 p.m. Sunday night. Get your tickets, but also keep an eye on the Warriors versus Thunder. Two teams that are off to incredible starts. Only 1 losses per team. And then also on the docket, Kings versus Suns. There's your weekend showdown.
All right, we'll see what takes place. That is Jim Eichenhofer. Again, our thanks to Erin Summers and John DeShazier. And thank you for tuning in to the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. Until then, so long, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, or you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time right here on the New Orleans Pelicans podcast